Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Unpacking. I'm sitting here with Josh Schmidt, and if you haven't gotten a chance to meet Josh, or maybe you're not in our church and you're just watching somewhere out in YouTube land, Josh is our lead of our Gen Now ministry, which is our kids ministry from infants all the way up to high school. Josh is the one who heads that all up, who's the leader of that. And like you said on Sunday, it can't be all done by one person. No. You have a fantastic team. You've put together a great team that are building up, training up the next generation and teaching them the word and everything like that. So Josh is an amazing person. He's basically my brother. I've known him for, golly, dude,
since you were little.
Yeah, I'm 24 now, so probably close to 15 years, I would think.
Yep.
10, 15 years, something like that. So, like I said, Josh is like a brother to me, and it is so awesome to be sitting here with him for the Unpacking video. So with that, I will shut up, stop talking, and we'll do what this video is about. So why don't you unpack your message for us this week?
Yeah, so the message this week, I've just been kind of stirring over the last year and a half, 2 years on the theme or topic of being naked and unashamed, and what that looks like as a person, what that looks like in a relationship with Jesus, what that looks like in friendships, and then even as I kind of touched on, and we'll probably get there at some point, but going through a divorce, I think being naked and unashamed in a marriage is pretty important. And when you go through something and there's pain and things, and you finally just get to a point of, I need to be the realest I've ever been, I need to be the rawest I've ever been. And it's stirred on me for a while, because I always thought that my relationship with Jesus was good. I thought that I was vulnerable with him. I thought that I was open with him. And then once I started going through everything, I realized that there was more depth that I could go to. And so as that just kind of sat in my heart for a couple years, it came up in a bunch of conversations unintentionally, but it was always just coming back to this thing of ripping everything off and being completely open, transparent with God. But then when we do that with God first, what that opens up for our relationships.
Yeah.
And it's not a real easy topic, because I think to get to that point, we have to realize that we have pains, we have trials, we have tribulations, we have things from being kids that we never dealt with. And so it's being willing to also be vulnerable with yourself. And we a lot of times make things look really good. We get the Instagram reels and the stories and what that looks like, and we get all the highlight reels of our lives. But we very seldomly talk about what got us to that point, what gave us the mindset that we have, what we went through, unless we are sharing a testimony or a message. But just trying to figure out how to just be unashamed. And as I walked through the initial parts of the divorce, that was something for me that I'd heard a podcast by Jay Valaton, and he said to weaponize your story. And for me, it was so important, because in the world, divorce is such a shameful thing. It sucks, but then when you see it in the church and somebody on staff in a leadership position, there's a lot of people that look at that and instantly disqualify. And so from that moment on, like, I knew I'd lived through a bunch of stuff, but it hit me really early when I listened to that podcast that this is now a part of my story, and I need to weaponize my story, because God was so good and so faithful in that it's not just when things are good, and to not be quiet. And there was moments where I was in prayer and I was just worshiping in different things, and I kept just out loud saying that you can't take my worship. You can take everything, and I think a Job story, you take everything, but you can't take my worship. And so just getting to the point where, instead of looking at my story and being guilty and feeling all this guilt and shame, how can I just be real with myself, accept what my story is, use it to help other people, use it to change me and catapult me into different depths of things.
Man, that's good. kind of the one thing that I think about whenever you're saying being naked and unashamed, or kind of letting, you said on Sunday, being real and raw. And a lot of the times what you see in church, or I guess the way that I look at it is, have you seen like the posts on Instagram where it's like Instagram versus reality kind of things?
Yeah.
That idea of on Instagram or on social media or in front of people, in front of an audience, so to speak, that you're put together, you're formal, you're black tie, so to speak, kind of thing, you know? And then the flip side of things, in reality, you're not put together. You're not, or not as put together. You're not as black tie as many people would think. And having to kind of say, you know what, I can't be this always. There is some stuff that goes down. There's some really bad things that go on behind closed doors sometimes. That's kind of a reality check for some people, because they want to seem put together. They want to seem, like T's are dotted and I's are crossed, you know?
I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
I know. In that, I mean, with people wanting to be that way, you kind of had to learn to break that. Mm-hmm. Going through some of the stuff that you've gone through, you've had to deal with some really, what people would say or count as tragic things. How did you settle that within yourself and be like, you know what, it's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay to not be the always put together or everything's perfect kind of person. In that, how did you really settle that within yourself, you know?
It's a journey, and like I'd said, I thought I was in a good place in my relationship with Jesus, like being faithful, reading, worshiping, being at church, serving, and not a performance base, but I thought I was in a good space. I mean, there was a lot of intentionality there. There was a lot of purpose, and I didn't see the real and the raw growing up. Everything was a mask. Everything was a charade. Everything was, as we grew up, everything made it seem like we had a bunch of money when we didn't, and I knew where the money was coming from, and it was just always this show of look at us, look at us, look at us. But then the moment that something hard happened, well, don't look at us. We don't want the attention after all the attention was drawn. And I think the world does a relatively good job about covering up and masking things, but I think the church takes the bread on that. I think the church, they have almost this false expectation or this false reality that or they've been told at some point, well, once you accept Jesus, nothing bad happens, everything's great. And so we somewhere, somehow buy into this lie that everything is good.
Yeah.
And so then when something does go bad, we almost count it as like a ding in our arm or something that we can't talk about. We can't talk about the battles. We can't talk about the scars. We just, well, I'm better. But how did you get there? And I think it's unfortunate that there's so many within the church, and there's so many communicators within the whole that minister at churches that put on this persona that, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, but I'm better than you. I don't screw up as much. I have a better relationship with Jesus. I'm in the Word all the time, and that's great, but life still happens.
Yeah.
Death still happens. Accidents still happen. Divorces still happen. Like, there's a lot of things that still happen, and we just don't see a lot of the uncomfortable conversations. We don't hear the stories. You hear a few here and there, but it's not the stories of enduring. It's not the stories of the fruit of the Spirit developing. And I ministered, back in February on enduring, and that's not a fun topic. Being naked and unashamed is not a fun topic. But to endure, to develop patience, to develop self-control, to develop endurance and things like that, the fruit of the Spirit. To develop all of that, you're gonna have to go through something. You can't develop an unconditional love and never be given the chance to unconditionally love somebody. And so as I navigated, the 2013 with my little brother being killed, that kind of opened some doors, but I still wasn't in a place to get as deep as I needed to be. And I didn't know that I could go deeper, but I was at my capacity in that moment. And then just different life events. And then I got to the point with going through the divorce that there was so much pain that it almost felt unbearable. Like I couldn't hardly stand up at times. And it was more of just a cry out, like, I don't understand and I need help, because I physically cannot carry this. Mentally, I can't carry this. Spiritually, I thought things were great. And it was just kind of an eye-opening for me that I had to get there. And through the early on of that process, I was seeing a counselor, which I don't hold lightly. I think that's something that a lot of people need to consider and look at and make that investment in themselves, because that also is an investment in their family and future relationships. But getting those tools to go to a different place, to go to a different depth, because everything that I had in my tool belt wasn't enough. And so when it had worked for what I had been through up to those moments, but then when the pain was deeper, when the situation was more intense, when it was that much more hurtful, the tools that I had were not enough. And so it was almost in desperation, but just crying out to God, like, I literally cannot carry this. And I had incredible people navigating the whole journey with me.
Yeah.
I was not alone. I knew I wasn't alone. But even when you have people, you still feel alone at times. And just in those moments where I knew I couldn't keep running, and there was a lot of times that I just stayed busy.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to face it. But then reality for me was, I have to face this at some point, because I've never seen anybody in my family face what they've gone through. It's always been, it's gonna happen, and we're either gonna run from it or we're gonna bury it and hide from it. And I just started crying out. I was trying to understand, and not so much in trying to get answers, but just trying to get it off my chest, because I had carried so much before that I didn't want to start taking that weight back on. So it's for sure a journey to just within yourself realize, I don't have to be perfect. I was not created to be perfect. Perfectionism is this false hope that we can get there. And when we're striving to be perfect and look perfect, then we're putting ourselves on a pedestal, or whoever we see all their highlight reels. And it happens with a lot of pastors and ministers. They get put on this pedestal, and then one little hiccup and like all hell breaks loose. People are just baffled. Well, we're all human beings, and our call, I don't think, is ever to be perfect. Yes, we're created in the image of Jesus, and he was, but we also, knowing what took place in the garden, that opened up everything. So God's original plan was messed up, and him knowing that, perfectionism, us being perfect, is such an unrealistic bar that we set that. And we let ourselves down, and we just need to dismantle, honestly, the false idol of being perfect, or even obtaining perfectionism, because you try to do that, and then you're yelling at your kids over stuff that shouldn't even be an argument, because you have to look good. And that was kind of in Sunday's message. We put on these religious clothes, and we put on these church clothes, and I started out in a sports coat with my fancy pocket square and a button up, and that's what we like people to see. We like people to see our best foot forward. We almost like it's a constant job interview. You're always at the top of your game. Reality is sometimes we get beat up. Sometimes we get, the clothes get tore up. Sometimes you get a little black and blue, but we always just try to, we just cover that up with some makeup, or we'll wear something different to not show that, or we'll put on another layer. Instead of ripping off what needs to come off, we just try to put something else over the top of it. And so it's just a reality of, I am not going to put that on myself, that weight of being perfect, and I don't want to carry that into any type of relationship I have, because I'm going to be let down.
Yeah. Dude, what you said about that false idol of perfectionism, that's a bar, man. that's good. Holy smokes. You said two things in your response there that really I think are vital to becoming becoming real and raw. Is number one being community, the people that you surround yourself with. It's so good to have people around you that are like-minded, that are ready to build you up whenever you need it, but also to kind of call you off your high horse whenever you need it too, and to say, dude, you need to cool your jets a little bit, you know? And then the second one was therapy. So first I want to touch on community. So often we see people that say church has done them wrong. You talked about church hurt a little bit, and what you said about church hurt was so good, that it was somebody trying to hold you accountable and you didn't like the accountability, so you left. That was good. But so often people, if they experience church hurt, sometimes legitimately getting hurt by the church, not somebody trying to hold them accountable, but like a legit church hurt, that they will run away from church. They say every church is that way, or Christians are hypocrites, and they kind of lump everybody together. Or you see the people that are well, I can have church on my horse out back, out in my pasture, or I can have church in my living room, I can have church in my prayer room, kind of deal, you know, and they kind of write church off as like, that's something that's not necessary. But it's so vital to our walk with God, to keep us in check, to surround ourselves with people, like I was saying, that are like-minded, that are chasing the same thing. How vital was community to you, and not just community, but a community of believers, through everything that you've walked through the death of your little brother, through the divorce, through other things that have gone on in life, or maybe even what's the contrast to those things. I know that you had said that whenever you were younger, when you lost your granddad, that you weren't fully in church. That they were the ones who took you to church, and whenever that happened, going to church kind of fell off for you a little bit. What are the contrasts to that? Being surrounded by a group of believers through tragedy, through tough times, and then not being in that community of believers through tragedy and tough times.
So we'll unpack that. My first thing, the church hurt thing, I'm not disregarding. I know there's people that are legitimately hurt by the church.
100%.
I know there's things that legitimately happen. I think there's unfortunate situations where people entrusted to those leadership roles take advantage of certain things, and I'm not disregarding that, but I think the term church hurt is used excessive amounts, and I think that's where they blame it on church hurt, when it was somebody trying to love them enough to hold them accountable, to call them more. And that's kind of what I touched on Sunday. So I'm not in any way, and I just want to clarify that, disregarding actual church hurt, because I know it's a thing.
It would be more of saying it's not church hurt, it's an individual inside of the church hurting you.
Yes, and that's the thing, is you blame it on the church when it was one person that hurt you. It wasn't the whole body, it was one person. There's a lot of things that like if that chair broke, you're not going to never sit in a chair again.
Yeah, it's not chair hurt.
No, you're going to be hurt by that specific chair,
right?
But you're going to go grab another chair. And so it's one person hurting you, and we just label it because we don't want to deal with our stuff. And I think that's part of being naked and unashamed, is when somebody does come to you. Now, there's context, there's the heart behind their approach. There's all of that. If it's somebody that has permission to speak into your life, they're probably not doing it to be mean.
Yeah.
But that's part of that naked and unashamed, is being willing to be exposed, in a sense, to grow deeper. And so I just to clarify that. But so I mean, I grew up in church. My grandparents went all the time. But my parents were divorced, and so I really only got to go every other weekend when I was with my dad and my grandparents. And he had taken us, and he was so faithful. My grandma was so faithful in that. But once he passed away, it was hard for my grandma to go back for a while, because they had both worked at the church, and there was just some things, and it was a few years, but then more time with my mom, and it became less of a priority. And there were still times that I would get connected with friends, and we'd go to a youth group or something, but it just wasn't as consistent. And I don't remember a lot of navigating that time with people that didn't believe, because we still had that around us. And I was 12, so I wasn't necessarily looking for that either. My parents were supportive and did the best that they could, but then just navigating the different things. When Tyler was killed in 2013, I had people around me, and I'd been in church and serving and committed and connected for a while, and it was just, when you know that you can call somebody and they're there, no questions. I remember vividly that I had conversation with your dad, and I called him at like 6:30 in the morning, and his response was, "I've got to take the kids to school, and then I'll be there." And that's what happened. He dropped you guys off and came straight to the hospital. And when the weight's put on you to be the strong one, and to be the encourager, and to help make decisions, there's a lot of weight. And we don't realize that. And so I get that your faith is your faith. I get that your relationship with Jesus is your relationship with Jesus. But to be ignorant enough to think that you can do it by yourself is such a crazy misconception. Because navigating that situation, to bury my little brother and his girlfriend at the same time with no community, would have been horrible. To not have somebody to lean on, to not have somebody to bounce my frustrations off of, it would have been unbelievable. And then I think about coming into, there's been different things I've seen. My mom was in domestic violence situations and stuff growing up, and diagnoses of medical conditions and things. And then you start to, as you see those things, you grow a little bit, and you grow a little bit more, and your tool belt gets a little bit better, and you're more connected. Well, then, that was 2013, and I was connected, I was committed, and I had great relationships then. But then you take that another 9.5 years to the end of 2022, and I find out that I'm going to be going through a divorce. Those relationships are much deeper. And even if they're different relationships, there's been a lot more life, there's been a lot more wisdom, there's been a lot more things that God's imparted that take those relationships to a different level. And I kind of mentioned it a little bit Sunday, but there was literally times that I would have to call people because I could not be alone. And it wasn't like suicidal thoughts. It had never gotten to that point. But it was dark. It was painful. There's depression, there's sadness, there's anger, there's so many emotions at once that I just physically, mentally, I could not be alone. And so I think about that, and I'm like, well, if you're the person that's, well, I can just go be with my horse, Your horse isn't going to give you wisdom when life comes at you.
Yeah.
You know, your horse might listen, but there's going to be no response. And a lot of times we don't realize how insufficient we are or how much wisdom we lack until we're right in the middle of something. And so to navigate that by yourself, there's no chance. Like, if I didn't have the people around me in the last 2.5 years, I honestly don't know how things would have turned out. And it's crazy because I had so many people around me that wanted to do anything they could, but they had never been there.
Right.
So it's really hard to accept that, because you have all these questions and you have all these things, but they've not been there. And so thankfully I was able to be connected, you know, with people of like stories that are in leadership roles, in pastoral roles, and their connection was so much more than just you can get through this. It was, here's what to expect.
Yeah.
Here's what's coming. Here's how you can go about this. Here's how you can handle this. Here's how you can pray about this. And then seeing those guys that I look up to that have the opportunity to speak into my life, seeing that they went through the same thing, but then they're remarried. They've been restored. They've had the redemption, and their marriages now are better than what they ever were.
Yeah.
And so it was always, I had the wisdom, I had somebody to go to, I had somebody to vent to that understood the pain and the frustration. But then in the exact same person, the exact same conversation, I had somebody that could speak hope because they had walked completely through it, been restored, been remarried, and things were flourishing. And so I think trying to do things alone, honestly, I think it's a pride thing. And I think it really comes down to a fear of being raw, being vulnerable, being naked, and being unashamed. Because if I tell you something and I come to you and I'm crying, I mean staff meetings, you saw me, the lowest of lows. But if I come to you with that, and I think a tendency, not so much maybe in friendships, but I think marriage, this is a dangerous one. If a guy comes to you in vulnerability and you twist that and use that against him at any point, that vulnerability will never exist again. And so I think it's important that you pick the right people, because I know a lot of people, not everybody knows every detail of my story. Yeah. There's a select few that could be in the deepest parts of that, and I think we have to be smart about that, because you don't want that used against you. But I think it's a fear thing and it's a pride thing, because if I say this, I'm completely exposing myself. I'm taking off every opportunity to fight back, because I'm going to lay down my sword at the table. I'm going to lay down my weapons. I'm going to lay down everything that I could use to fight. So you have no way to be on the offense. But then if I'm going to be real, and I'm going to be raw, and I'm going to be naked, and I'm going to be unashamed, completely ripping everything off, I have to take off my armor as well. Yeah. So now I have no way to fight, and I have no way to protect myself. Right. And so that getting to that place is hard for everybody, but I think it's really difficult for guys. Because if I come to you and I'm in so much pain that I can't have a conversation without crying, that I can't have a conversation, it's weird for us, not anymore for me, but at one point I was like, I can't just hug somebody and cry. Right. Girls can do it, and nobody thinks twice. Yeah. But if I call a buddy, and thankfully I've got those people that I know that I can do that with, but I think it's something within us that there's a fear. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to take on more guilt or shame, because we should have it all together. We've got that false idol of being perfect again. Yeah. But then it's a thing of, can I let somebody in? Because the moment that I let somebody into those places, they know the deepest and darkest things about what I'm walking through, and they can use it against me. Yeah. and you hope that they don't, and you have to trust that they don't, but it's never a guarantee, I don't think. I mean, there's always the free will and the choice of people, and I think you pick your friends well enough, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a really hard place to walk in and say, okay, here's my weapons, here's my ability to be on the offense, but I'm going to talk about something that's going to completely expose myself, so here's all of my armor, and I no longer have a way to be on the defense and protect.
Right.
That's a hard place to be, but if we would get there, it would change every relationship that you ever encounter.
Yeah. That's good. It's so important to have those people around you. I mean, that community. I mean, there's been times where like you'll just ask me like, "Hey man, you good? Like I notice you seem a little off, or is everything going okay?" You know, you'll just ask me randomly about that, and I know I ask you randomly sometimes too, like, "Hey man, you good?" And having those relationships where you can just talk to somebody and just be without any fear of judgment, or being like, I don't know if I can lay down my sword and take off my armor in front of you. Finding that person that you're like, I know that I can do all of that I can be completely vulnerable, that I don't have to worry about having to protect myself. I don't have to worry about having to fight, that I can just be real, raw, and bare myself in front of this person. It's so important.
It is, and I think it's a huge opportunity that's missed. And we don't think about that until we need that, and then you've not done the work to have it. So I'm good, I'll never need that. And then life happens, or some trauma happens, and now you wish you had somebody that you could go to, but you've never allowed yourself to even start creating those relationships. So all your friendships are super surface level, and something happens where you need the depths, but you don't have that. And so I think that's dangerous too, is not allowing that. It is scary, and those conversations do suck, and they are hard, and they are uncomfortable. But we also, when everything is good, I don't think we're growing and developing as much. Our character is not growing and not being forced to grow. Our faith is not growing when I have to trust God for something that's really hard in the middle of trauma or tragic event, and to see Him come through. My faith is now at a different level. My expectation is at a different level. And it is important to find those people, because I need to be able to go to them, but the same guys that I went to cry and to walk through the divorce were the same guys that they would let me talk about it, and then they would be like, but what did you do?
Man,
where were you wrong? What do you fix going forward? And so it was never, don't find somebody that's just going to take your side and jump on your pity party train. So they would hear me out, but then instantly it's, you had a part to do in this too. And I knew that from day one, and never shied away from that. Never tried to fully the he said, she said game. But when you have somebody that's going to hear you out and say, but you need to work on this, you've got to work on this to heal, it's vital. And then, like we'd mentioned, counselors and therapy. And I don't know if you have a question on that, but
I was going to get into that next.
It's finding people you can trust does not happen without a community, and you can't. I think the biggest one is when people die, and that's a natural life thing. Like, I hate to say it, everybody's going to die at some point, right? And everybody's tough, and everybody carries everything until it's the one person, and something happens to them, and it just rocks your world. But you've never left your pasture. You've never left your job. You've never made friends outside of, hey, how are you? Like, there's never been depth, and now all of a sudden you're in this really, really, really tough moment, And because of your choices up to that, you have no choice but to be in isolation. Because it's really hard to be vulnerable at any point. But then when you go from 0 to 100, because it's a trauma event, it's going to be even more difficult to open up.
Yeah.
But if you have that depth and you have that openness and you have that ability to walk in and lay your weapons down and lay your armor down before all hell breaks loose, when it does, it's going to be really easy to take that stuff off.
Yeah. Man, that's good. This will probably be my last question, but like I said, the second part of that was about finding a counselor, finding or therapist, or whatever you want to call it. I feel like so often in the church world, whenever you say that you have a therapist or that you have a counselor, that people are like, whoa, something's really wrong with you. Because usually the whole idea, or at least what I think of, is like in Looney Tunes, whenever Bugs Bunny is laying on the couch and he's looking up and he's like, well, whenever my mother left me whenever I was a baby, and the guy's writing all this stuff down, and he's like, you need to take some depression medication, you know. That's the idea that most people have about what going to therapy or having a counselor is like. And especially in church world, people are like, well, brother, you just need to pray more. You need to do a lot more you need to do a lot more praying. You need to get on your knees a whole lot more and stuff like that. But in all actuality, I mean, a counselor is so good. I mean,
who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? Who would have thought that would be necessary? But that idea, people look at that as like, I have to be really messed up to have a counselor. And maybe being really messed up is your breaking point. It's your final straw. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back kind of deal. But having a counselor is not a bad thing. Even if life is good, having a counselor to just say, hey, how are things? Are you doing okay? Or is life doing good, or anything like that? Along with having that community, having a counselor that you can talk to in full confidentiality, because HIPAA and stuff like that, but them being there for you to give you tools to help encourage you in a way, and to be that ear to listen to you. How important is that for you? I mean, like I said, the stigma around it is that you got to be really messed up, or that you got to be like on the verge of a disaster happening to you.
Right.
But that doesn't have to always be the case. Counseling is a good thing. Having a counselor is a good thing. It's a tool. It's not what am I trying to think? It's not a Band-Aid that you can just slap over something. It's something that will actually help.
It is. In reality is, we are that messed up. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, we're human, right?
Yeah.
Your parents are human. Your grandparents are human. So reality is, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to be open enough with yourself or not, you are that messed up. I'm that messed up. Like, it's okay. It doesn't, and everybody's version is different. Well, I'm not thinking suicide. I don't have an addiction. You're still messed up.
Yeah.
Like, you were born in an imperfect world to imperfect parents, dealing with an imperfect humanity. You're messed up. At some point, something happened. And it may be as simple as you got yelled at, your parents snapped on you for something that you didn't do, but it was influential and impacted you enough that then you had fear going forward, and there's your false perfectionism, because I can't get in trouble again. So reality, we are. Mm-hmm. But they give you such a different outlook. Now find somebody that's reputable. I mean, if you're a believer in Jesus, there's counselors that will pray with you and be able to speak the word over you because they are a Christian counselor. But there's also counselors that don't have that title that are still going to be just as effective. But if your marriage is struggling, don't go to somebody that's going to tell you just to get a divorce. Like, find somebody that's going to help get to the bottom, because the whole thing with a counselor is we're no longer just playing surface level. And so when I met my counselor for the first time, I walked in, I called his office. I said, I want a guy, because you can pick guys or girls. I said, I want a guy. I don't care age. I don't care. Like, I just need to go in. And the first day that I met him, and I sat down, he's on his chair, I'm on a couch, and I looked at him and I said, I'm just going to be real. And I had come to a point through kind of like I explained this weekend, my what the F moments, and trying to just be figuring things out and understanding, and not to be vulgar, but I finally had hit that point where when I walked into my counselor's office for the first time, I sat down and I looked at him and I said, here's the deal. I said, I love Jesus, I serve our church, I love our community, but I'm not here to hide anything. I said, I might cuss, I might get angry, I might get upset, I might say something stupid, I might say something offensive. My goal is not to offend you, my goal is not to be vulgar. I said, but I am done just picking and choosing what I'm going to work through. I said, and if that's not for you, I'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, you will be extremely successful because you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So if you go in and you've got all these reserves and you can't even tell them that you're messed up, well, we're all messed up. Like, if you can't admit to that, you may not get very far.
Right.
But if you can walk in and say, because it's cool how their stuff works, if you run into them that night at dinner, they can't even acknowledge that they know you.
Right.
So you can walk up and say hi to them, and then they'll acknowledge you, but they will never just come acknowledge you first. Like, that's in their contracts and their paperwork. So you can literally have a meltdown, you can literally blow up, you can literally explode, and see the guy later at dinner, and he's never going to make a statement that he even knows you.
Right.
So it's extremely safe if you allow it to be, but having that approach that I'm not going to hold anything back, because if I'm going to pay for it, I need it to be as effective as possible.
Right.
I knew at that moment that I had carried unforgiveness and things from when my grandpa passed away. I knew that I had carried bitterness and things from when I got diagnosed, with type 1 diabetes, and my dad left the hospital. Like, there was things that I knew I was already carrying, and I didn't want to just keep carrying things. And so a big thing for me was to just be that open and that transparent so that I could work through it. But then there was tools, and he's like, I felt like a kid, honestly, because he hands me a color wheel, and it had like 85 different emotions on it. But the one that stood out was the only one that I really knew how to express was anger. And he obviously told me things and taught me things about that. But then a simple tool as, okay, I want you to go back and relive that moment or think about it, and how does it make you feel? Man, I was angry, but really I was hurting so bad that I didn't know. And so taking off that shell and being naked and vulnerable and unashamed really just catapulted everything. I was having a conversation a couple weeks ago with somebody, and it really hit me, because life happens and there's trauma. There's things that mess us up. There's things that we can't control that mess you up. My divorce will have an effect on my kids. They had no control over it, had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So there's going to be events, but when we don't deal with that event and we put it in and we just keep it in, it just stays there. But then you may start to work through it, and then something else happens.
Right.
And so now you've got two events, and either you try to work through it and you don't, and something else happens. So you've got all of this compiled. Well, as you're compiling it, it no longer becomes separate instances, separate moments. So what I realized is that if I was going to be raw and unashamed in counseling, I had to address things from when I was 6 years old to when I got diagnosed with diabetes, to when my grandpa passed away, to when I saw stuff happen with my mom, to when I went through a divorce, but I couldn't just unpack one. So that's the hard part, is when you choose to be naked and unashamed, you no longer get to pick, I'm going to fix just this one. Because we've suppressed it so long that now they're all intertwined and intermingled, and they've grown together, because this hurt, had it been handled, would have never allowed this frustration to happen.
Yeah.
And so now they're all intermingled, and the pain and the trauma and everything is like a rubber band ball that you can never find just one to pull off.
Oh, wow.
And so as you pull one, then stuff starts to unravel.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's how it's going to have to come out. But
Right.
God is so gracious, and even when it all comes out, that it can seem overwhelming. But the moment that I was able to get there with him was instant, with how I could feel him start to change things. But it took me just finally, no more Band-Aids, no more cover-ups, no more hiding, ripping everything off. I know this potentially hurts.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot come out. But when I finally hit that point, the peace, the love, the way that God moved in and just supernaturally began to just heal things. Because I finally made the choice to just let him go.
Man, that's good. Dude, your message this weekend was outstanding. Mom and Dad, for those of you who don't know, Mom and Dad are out of town, and I texted them. Dad texted me Sunday morning, asked how things were, and I said, things are going really, really good. And I told him, I said, Josh's message today was incredible. And he said, I know, I watched it. So Dad really, really liked your message. Both Mom and Dad did. I mean, dude, I can't say anything else other than it was just an outstanding message.
Thank you.
You brought a great word, a very freeing word, and one that people need to hear. So I appreciate you for stepping out and saying, you know what, this may stir the pot a little bit. It may not land well with some people, but it's something that people need to hear. And from you doing that, I mean, whenever you had that time of prayer at the end, people came up. I mean, there was, probably 15, 20 people that came up to the front, and then multiple people standing in the auditorium. But dude, it was such a freeing message. It was something I got ministered to at the end. Stuff that I didn't even know that was an issue. I was already standing because I was playing, so I was like, you know what? The next thing that I can do is I can kneel. So I knelt down, and I was just letting God minister to me. And Kayleen came up and started praying. Lacey, my wife, came up and started praying, and Kayleen started hitting on things that I was like, I didn't even know that I was carrying this. And here I am. I mean, I started weeping. I mean, just bawling, tears. I was snotting. It was gross, but dude, I got ministered to. So many other people got ministered to. It was just such a good word. And I cannot stress that enough.
Well, thank you. It's a difficult topic, but I think the reality is if people will just be willing, it is free.
Yeah.
And when you feel the weight, and that was something for me, is it got to a point where I could tangibly feel the release. I could tangibly feel things that I'd forgotten I'd carried or forgotten I'd picked up. And my thing is, was it kind of a direct approach? Was it kind of in your face? Yes. But I think a lot of times, again, we hide behind offense when we're not really offended, but we're going to say we're offended because we just don't want to deal with our own stuff. And so I think my intention sometimes is to offend, because I think offend brings conviction, but to choose to be offended, I think we've all had that moment. And if you're too afraid because you're Christian to say that you've had that moment, then we have to self-reflect.
Yeah.
But to have that moment, we've all been there. If you haven't, you will at some point. You'll have a death, you'll have turmoil. But I think a lot of times we hide behind offense, because if I'm offended, I can blame somebody else and still not have to look inward to fix what caused the offense. Because it's not, maybe it's offensive, but it's not super offensive.
Yeah.
But if the enemy can use offense to keep me from saying I am messed up and I need to get naked and unashamed, he's dang sure going to use offense.
Yeah. Man, so good. Like I said, I can't stress it enough. That was just incredible. Such a good word this weekend. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know that you're busy, you got other stuff going on, but thank you for taking time to sit down with me to make this video. It's going to be a good one. I think people are going to get a lot out of it.
Well, hopefully. And if there's ever questions, I'm available, and I just believe for boldness for people, and a willingness to get there. We've got our armor, but I think a lot of times it doesn't fit right, because we've got so much stuff that we're trying to hide that we're still causing seams, and we're creating places that our own armor won't cover, because we've got so many band-aids that it doesn't sit right.
Man, that's good. You keep dropping bars, and I'm trying to end this thing. I'm like, golly, man.
Sorry.
You're good.
It's been a journey, but it's worth it.
It's a good journey. I mean, I've walking through you with it, getting to see you come out on the other side of each one of these deals that would put a lot of people down, that would make people crumble, make their foundation crumble. You did not let it let you crumble. You came out stronger each time, and that's a testimony in and of itself. So,
well, thanks for being there, walking, and
heck yeah, man. Always.
Hope it's good.
Always. Well, with that, everybody, that's been another episode of Unpacking. I know this one might be a little bit long, but it is so worth it. If you made it to the end, I'm sure you got a lot of little nuggets out of that. It was such a good message on Sunday. You can go back and watch it. It should be the video previous to this one. So with that, thank you guys again so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel to be notified about more videos just like this one. And when you like and comment, it pushes our videos in the algorithm to more people, so that more people can see these, get ministered to, and they can they can get encouraged and hear something that God has for them. So with that, again, thank you guys so much. Josh, thank you again for sitting down with me. Y'all have a great rest of your week, and
thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
You got it, man. Very cool.